FPL Game Week 21 first transfer plans. In today's video, we're going to have a look at how my team is lining up going into Game Week 21. Game Week 20 was never going to be the best game week I've ever had, but it hasn't been quite as awful as I expected because what a game of football that was between Liverpool and Manchester United. We'll have a look at some potential replacements because I still own Jackson and Enzo Fernandez, and as a Chelsea fan who owns triple Chelsea at the moment, it is not a very pleasant watch. So we'll discuss that mainly. We'll discuss a few hot topic questions and actually why you shouldn't be making any early transfers over the next week or so. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here. And we are recording just as Liverpool-Manchester United has ended. I've had all my players play in game week 20. I haven't got my rank up sort of on the graphic because there's still a game to go tomorrow night between Wolves and Nottingham Forest. I don't have anyone left to play and I'm on a red arrow, which means I'm guaranteed to get a red arrow unless Chris Wood misses probably like 3 penalties tomorrow night. But it's not been quite as bad as I anticipated and as bad as my team looked going into game week 20. So I'll put up on screen now where we're at. I think I've dropped from 71k down to 77. That is TBC though, because we do have Bruno Fernandes currently on 2 bonus points, but it's really tight. He can in theory get 3. He can in theory get 0. I think it's more likely he goes down than he goes up. My team did okay, actually. I kept João Pedro. I rolled my transfer. I didn't buy Gordon. Now, the swap of Jackson to Wood and Gordon in for Enzo Fernandez would have been a couple of transfers that I probably should have done. And even if there was a blank for Chris Wood on Monday night, it is a couple of transfers I probably should have done. But I'm actually not that concerned about rolling my transfer and being on a small red arrow. I expected to be about 100k at the end of this game week, looking how bad my team was on paper. And yes, it hasn't done well, but unless, I think if Chris Wood scores and Forest keep a clean sheet, so they win to 0, I will probably be about 100k. So, because everyone's got about 1 player left, either a Forest defender or Chris Wood. Some of you will have none, some of you will have both. So, if I can end the game week inside the top 100k, that was always the aim. And now I've got 3 free transfers and I'm still okay with my team going forward. So, to look at my team on paper going into game week 21, we've got David Raya in goal. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the Arsenal defence. I'm not loving the way Arsenal are performing at the moment, but they are conceding very, very small XG chances, and they've just been really unlucky to not keep a clean sheet recently. Like, we saw the one shot that Brentford basically had where Brian and Burma scored. Then there was the penalty, and whether you think the Brighton penalty or not should have been a penalty. To be honest, as an owner of João Pedro, I don't really mind because it wiped out a double clean sheet, but João Pedro scored and got 3 bonus as a result. So I'm okay with the Arsenal defence going forward, but if I ever needed money for something, David Raya is still one that I could potentially sell. Munoz, Gabriel, Trent is going to be a pretty safe defence for me. There is a little bit of a concern, though, that Trent might not keep his place. He was pretty dreadful, particularly defensively in that game against Manchester United just now. And Connor Bradley is now back, fit and available. If Trent was to miss just 1 game, I think I would sell him. Is his head in Madrid? Is Connor Bradley the long-term understudy for Trent? And could we see him start some games? It is possible. So, although Trent is in my team, they're likely to have a double in either game week 24 or game week 25. So, I don't really have a plan to sell Trent. But I'm not sure I'll be buying new with Connor Bradley back, and I am keeping a close eye on him. Munoz, how he didn't get a return against Chelsea at the weekend, I don't quite know. He still looks great. Really happy with him as a pick with the fixture going forward. And then, of course, Gabriel. On the bench, Greaves looks like he's firmly got his place in that Ipswich team, which is really nice. I don't plan on playing him, but just for him to be in the squad is a boost. He's got Southampton at home in the next few weeks. Mykolenko, Everton, not great at the moment. And Mykolenko is actually one that Everton fans are calling to be dropped. They're actually hoping they sign a new left back in January to bench Mykolenko. That's how bad he's been recently in terms of performances. So, I mean, I don't plan on playing them this week. Brighton at home for Greaves and Aston Villa at home for Mykolenko. It's okay. And Enzo. I was about to say I officially confirm I will never play Enzo Fernandez again in my starting lineup. But they do have Wolves at home in game week 22. And there is a very small chance that I might have to play him. But I think it's very, very unlikely that I ever play Enzo Fernandez in my FPL team ever again. In terms of my starting lineup, Palmer, Salah, of course, in. Palmer scored, Salah scored. Those two are just mainstays. I love having them in my team, and they just both look like they're main men and unstoppable at the moment. Then it is double Manchester United, which, going into this week in game week 20, looked dreadful. And Fernandes has come out currently with 7. Ahmad is on my bench with a 9-pointer with a clean sheet, with a goal. Yeah, maybe I should have played Ahmad, but he was realistically never going to get anywhere near my lineup going away to Liverpool. So it is what it is with him. And to be honest, the actual benefit is it means that they're actually not bad holds going forward. And they might actually be transfers in for some people going into Southampton at home this week, which means I'm not going to lose value on Ahmad or Fernandes this week, which is a nice bonus. And they've got probably one of the easiest fixtures on paper at the moment at home to Southampton. Ahmad has been really good. Fernandes, I wonder if he'll play as part of the midfield too against Southampton, and they might bring Garnacho into the starting lineup. But let's wait and see. I mean, they're both going to start for me. This is kind of why I held them this long. And it's not the end of the world. Like, they did put up a really good performance against Liverpool. Probably the best performance I've seen them put up, maybe apart from the City game under Ruben Amorim. So let's hope they can continue that into the Southampton game. And then up front, Isak, of course, is going nowhere. He's up to 9.3 million now. João Pedro has a penalty and 2 assists in the past 2 game weeks and now goes away to Ipswich. He's not going anywhere either. Which leaves the main man up front, Jackson, who is continuing to get chances and continuing to miss chances. Now, he has Bournemouth at home this week and Wolves at home next week. But Jackson and Enzo, when you look at my team, I'm sure you're all saying it. And if there's someone else you think's an issue, maybe the double Man United, but that's not an issue this week. Jackson and Enzo are the big issues in my lineup at the moment. I do have 3 free transfers, so I could do a whole lot of restructuring. I could upgrade Enzo, I could downgrade Jackson, I could do a lot with my team, but I don't have to play Enzo this week, so I don't massively need to sell him. And then it's just Jackson. But Bournemouth at home this week and then Wolves at home the week after. Is it the worst idea to keep Jackson when he is getting chances? He feels he's very close. It feels like Darwin of a while ago when we all owned him and he was really close to a haul and he never got it. And maybe that's the case with Jackson, that he'll just continue to miss chances. And his minutes are getting a little bit worrying. But we still only we played Tuesday night in game week 21 and then Monday night in game week 22. So that's a really good rest for him. So I don't massively feel concerned about his minutes. It's just if there's better options elsewhere. So, having a look at some potential Jackson replacements. The first one is to go to Raul Jimenez, who scored 2 penalties today. West Ham away, Leicester away in the next 2, but then the fixtures from game week 23 do start to get a little bit more difficult. His underlying data per 90 is actually really, really good, although his actual output is not quite as strong as some of the others. I could go to Chris Wood, who I do really like, but Liverpool at home this week. I'm just not going to move Jackson to Chris Wood this week. If I was going to get Chris Wood, I'd roll and get Chris Wood going into game week 22 because Jackson has Bournemouth at home this week, whereas Chris Wood has Liverpool at home. Now, maybe Wood is still a better buy this week, but I reckon I'll take my chance and hold on to Jackson. Looking at a few others, there's no Gabriel Jesus on here, but I think I'm concerned enough about Arsenal. We'll talk about them in a little bit more detail in terms of their attack in a moment. So I'm not going to buy Jesus. Gakpo. Now, maybe we need to start having a look at Gakpo. They've got pretty nice fixtures over the next few. Forest away, Brentford away, Ipswich at home in the next 3. Does scream chances. My only concern is Jota is now back. Luis Diaz is there. They've got Darwin. They've got Gakpo. Gakpo, Diaz, Darwin, Jota. That's a lot of players who potentially want minutes. And even when he starts, he's unlikely to play that many minutes. Now, he did score against Manchester United, but if he hadn't have scored, he was about to be subbed off. And then they changed it and subbed Luis Diaz off either because Gakpo scored. But that doesn't fill me with enough confidence in terms of minutes, particularly with Forest away this week, who are good defence, that I should move Jackson to Gakpo. The 2 others are actually probably the most likely for me to buy would be Mateta. Getting a bit of that Palace attack, Leicester, West Ham, Brentford in the next 3 is really nice. He scored this week. Underlying data was actually the weakest of any of them we've got here, but Palace do feel like they're starting to tick a little bit. I've got Munoz, Sarr and Eze are also good picks as well. But actually, the most likely thing is to buy Visa, but not to buy him this week because he's got City at home, Liverpool at home in the next 2. His output is fantastic. His underlying data is the best out of all the 6 forwards we've got here. And I can play Jackson for Bournemouth at home, Wolves at home in the next 2. And then I could go to Visa in game week 23 when he's got Palace away, Spurs at home, and then a nice run of fixtures from game week 25 onwards. If I was going to make a transfer this week and I decide to sell Jackson, it would probably be Mateta. And it would also free up enough money to potentially go and upgrade one of my midfielders to someone like an Anthony Gordon as well. So my plan at the moment is to give Jackson Bournemouth at home, Wolves at home, and sell him in game week 23 for Visa because I really like what Brentford are doing. They look great against Southampton and they have some nice fixtures as well. But if I decide to sell this week, I do think Mateta is the most likely. Now, I could go to Chris Wood and bench him this week. And when I look at my next transfer, which could be Enzo Fernandes up to Anthony Gordon, I potentially should have done that this week, and I could still do the same 2 transfers and just bench Chris Wood against Liverpool and play Anthony Gordon in a 3-5-2. So Visa, Mateta and Wood are still the top 3 I look at. Visa is the best if I can wait to game week 23. If I need a player this week, it's Mateta. If I make 2 transfers, it's Chris Wood. So just to have a look at potential Enzo Fernandez replacements, I don't need one this week because he is on my bench, but the top 3 replacements I look at is A, going to a Crystal Palace midfielder. Now, I actually think Eze versus Sarr is really close, and I'm not sure Eze is actually worth the 0.7 million more than Sarr, but he has got the returns in the past 2, which makes recency bias look like Eze is probably a better buy. He's not on penalties, and he's not on corners as well at the moment, with Will Hughes taking them and Mateta likely being on penalties like we saw early on in the season, which does dampen Eze just a little bit. Again, just like Brentford, I could go to Brian Mbeumo, not have him for City, not have him for Liverpool, and go in game week 23, or I could go to Anthony Gordon. The issue with Gordon and Mbeumo is I don't have the money in the bank to do Eze to Gordon or Eze to Mbeumo on their own. It would only happen if I sell Jackson, or in theory I could sell it. If Trent got injured, for example, I could sell him. But unless I sell someone else, I can't do Eze to Mbeumo and Eze to Gordon for free. So unless I want to sell Jackson, then I can get these. So it's basically, do I think Gordon or Mbeumo for the next 2 are better than Jackson? And I'm not really sure it is. I could just do Eze to in for Enzo this week. But again, I'm just giving myself a benching headache, which I don't really love. And just before we look back at my team, a few questions that you're asking. So the first thing to remind you is there is a lot of football between now and game week 21. So a reminder, game week 21 is not actually next weekend. It's not until Tuesday next week. So in like 8 days, 9 days or so. Because there's FA Cup weekend next weekend where almost every Premier League team plays. And there's also EFL Cup semi-finals during this midweek as well. So there is a lot of highly owned players, including the likes of Newcastle and Arsenal, playing during this midweek. So there is a lot going on. So I would urge you not to make early transfers. I almost made one last night, sort of rash, not liking my team. And I'm glad I held and haven't made them. So beware of early transfers. Next up is what to do with Arsenal. I wouldn't be put off by them. Their defensive performances are still really good. They've conceded some really low XG chances and a penalty in the past few games. It doesn't put me off. Now, going forward, there's a little bit of functionality missing. And if Nwaneri is injured as well, it does boost Odegaard and Martinelli, who are the most highly owned ones in terms of minutes. But I don't think it's massively good for Arsenal as a team because he's been really good in the past couple of games. I don't think I'd be buying new into Martinelli, Odegaard, or Gabriel Jesus because Arteta has shown that he will rotate. And when Havertz comes back, he could take Gabriel Jesus' place. Odegaard has dropped out, but that was for illness. I expect Odegaard to play almost all the games. Or you could go and have a look at Martinelli as well. I don't think I'd buy new, but if you've got them, Spurs at home this week is a great fixture. Then is Haaland back. So he scored twice this week. He scored in the previous game, but I still don't see me spending the money on him just yet. Yes, they played Leicester and they played West Ham. Those are 2 games that they should massively be winning, whoever it is. Like, even if it's, I don't know, someone lower down the table, those are 2 games that you would expect to win and score goals. So I don't massively see this as a sudden boost. If you've got Haaland, you'll be loving the points. But if you don't own him, I'm not really sure I'll be looking to go and buy him. Savinho, on the other hand, has looked pretty good over the past couple and could be a bit of a differential in midfield. But again, I'm not sure I trust Man United to go and Manchester City go and buy them. The other thing, of course, is Manchester United. They've got Southampton at home this week. I still think Bruno and Ahmad are fine long-term holds. Having a double up is probably not ideal, but having one of them for this fixture is probably okay. Would I do Odegaard to Bruno, for example, this week? I probably would. Would I do Enzo to Ahmad? Probably not. I think I would probably go to someone like a Sarr first, but there are routes to potentially buying Man United players, and it probably is only Ahmad and Bruno that you're probably looking at. And if you have a route to them, I don't mind it, but I imagine most of you won't. So to wrap up with my team, I've got a few potential transfer plans to sort of discuss, and they all revolve around Jackson and Enzo Fernandez. The first one is just doing Jackson to another forward that I like, potentially going to Mateta. That is something I could do. I could do 2 transfers this week of Jackson and Enzo to Gordon and Chris Wood. I would then bench Chris Wood this week. I would play a 3-5-2 with Gordon at home to Wolves, and I don't have Jackson, and I've got Chris Wood, and he can come in for Southampton at home next week anyway. Or the third option is I roll my transfer again. I take 4 free transfers into next week. And I don't sell Jackson until game week 23 when he plays against Manchester City. And I do Jackson to Visa and Enzo Fernandez up to Brian Mbeumo and get double Brentford for their nice fixture run and how good they've been. Right now, if I had to rank them, most likely is I roll the transfer. And I wait and I get double Brentford and I go Visa and Mbeumo and use that as something a little bit different to what a lot of teams have. And I keep Jackson for Bournemouth at home, Wolves at home. Second most likely is to do the Gordon swap and sell Jackson to Chris Wood and Enzo up to Gordon. And the third most likely will be just to do Jackson Mateta, which I don't think I'm going to do. I'd say I'm about 70% chance that I'll roll, 30% chance I do the Gordon move, and 70% chance I roll, maybe 25% chance I go the Gordon route, and then 5% chance that I do the Mateta route. It's possible Mateta, but I see it very, very unlikely because I prefer Visa long term. I prefer Chris Wood long term, prefer Gordon long term. It feels like, and I don't think Mateta's that much better this week than Jackson, although the Leicester away fixture is probably better. Captaincy is probably the only final thing to discuss. Salah could get it, Palmer could get it, Isak could get it. Because I've got Jackson, I don't think I'm going to put it on Palmer, and Bournemouth are not being that bad. So it is between Salah and Alexander Isak at the moment. Again, I could put it on Fernandes, but given I've got double Manchester United, I'm not going to do that either. So it really does boil down to Salah and Isak, and Forest are very, very good at the moment. And I probably expect Newcastle to score more goals than I do Liverpool. But do I expect Salah to probably have a higher share of the goals for Liverpool? Yes. At the moment, the captaincy armband is on most Salah. There is, of course, cup games and everything, which could potentially change that. But at the moment, is Salah captain, Isak vice captain. But I'm not saying it won't move. I just don't think it will by the deadline. So that's where I'm at. Isak could get it. I don't think it'll be on Palmer. And I plan on rolling my transfer or doing Jackson to Chris Wood and Bencham and Enzo up to Anthony Gordon with 2 free transfers. Those are all the first transfer plans. Again, the next deadline is not for about 9 days, but we do have some videos planned between now and then. I'm going to do, because you're asking all about it, and it was all over the stream on Saturday morning as well, a chip strategy video. The first look at chip strategy for this season I'm going to do probably on Wednesday this week. So if you want to see that, more videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Leave any questions you have, early thoughts about your team. What would you do if you're in my situation as well? Would you roll? Is it just sensible to roll again? Get up to 4 free transfers. Let it all know in the comment section down below. Good luck with your players on Monday night. I will be cheering on Wolves, hoping for goals and no Chris Wood return, but I don't expect very much. Thank you all for watching. Have a lovely Sunday evening and rest of your week. I will see you all again very soon.